It's vital for humans, especially now, as we are moving into a critical time period for the totality of humanity, which is also an incredible opportunity for disidentifying from the unconsciousness that otherwise governs the world. So how do you do it? In a way, you don't even do it. One could almost say the cessation of doing and the realization of being. And doing on a primordial level is thinking. Humans are thinking all the time, except in dreamless sleep. And then life gets more and more difficult. Then you watch more and more in the news on TV, and whatever it's called, the news is not the news anymore. It's just opinions. It's just stupid manipulation. And you watch him and you get drawn into that and you think it's all so real. And then you see anxiety arises, anger arises, suffering arises. And as humans, as the suffering increases, as I said before, the motivation to awaken in many humans also increases. And then the state of consciousness with which you meet the external situation changes, which means how the way in which you experience an external situation changes. What subsequently happens on an external level is also to a large extent determined by your state of consciousness in the present moment. What subsequently happens in the so-called future, which never comes, because you can only experience the future as the present moment, so you can never experience the future except as a thought form. You cannot actually say, oh, there it is, because the moment you say there it is, it's the present. So if you meet a difficult situation or a difficult person in a state of consciousness that is not reactive, but in an awakened state of consciousness, which means present, then it changes also the situation, the external situation. If you are unconscious, you face an external situation and you amplify the problem by your unconscious reactivity of the egoic self. It feels threatened in the situation, has a numerous anxiety. Then all the things that you do in order to remove the situation or make it better actually makes it worse. Whenever you're motivated by fear or anger, this is what happens. You think you're resolving the situation, but you're amplifying it. Terrible. The key is then to realize this dimension within yourself that is beyond the thinking mind and all the mental emotional turbulence. And this happens very easily when your mind, your thinking mind, subsides. Now what remains? A sense of presence, a sense of beingness. It's not loss of consciousness, it's loss of thinking when it's not needed, because thinking is useful for many things and destructive for many other things. And so you discover when it's useful and you let go of it when it's destructive. And in that spacious presence, strange thing is, you don't know anything anymore, of course, because there's no concepts anymore in your mind. And yet, that is the essence of who you are, this beingness or presence. So you don't know yourself anymore as an object, which is when you live through the ego, then you become an object to yourself in your consciousness, and you have a relationship with yourself. You can say, I love myself. It's better to love yourself than to hate yourself, true, but you still have a relationship with yourself. This too, I love myself. But when you with the realization of being, you are yourself. So you cannot know yourself as an object of knowledge, but you can know yourself as the eternal subject of all knowing. And that's where wisdom arises. This is the source of all real knowing, and the source of all true intelligence is in this non-conceptual, vast intelligence, which is the intelligence of consciousness itself, which is one with who you are. And then when you can link into that, you become inspired. It can inspire your mind. Your mind can create. You have creative thoughts. You have creative input, ideas. You take action that is wise rather than unconscious action that produces more suffering for yourself and others. Yes, you need concepts and you can use concepts, but don't lose yourself in concepts. Don't look for yourself in concepts and then have a narrative in your mind that says, this is who I am. This story of yourself is not essentially who you are. This limited entity, the person, is a surface phenomenon. It's not who you are, but the realization of who you are, that's the awakening, but it's not conceptual. So look for the cessation of thought. Look for it in little moments. And as I said before, when you go into anything natural, when you go into nature, you can then sense something that is almost awe-inspiring. I'm not romanticizing nature. Of course, nature can also kill you, but there is something there that is holy or sacred. It's not impossibly difficult. What I am suggesting is the most important task in your life. This is the task of realizing the transcendent dimension to who you are. Very simply by realizing that you do not have to think all the time. That there's always a possibility in yourself, it's just waiting to be discovered. You are waiting to be discovered, so to speak. That dimension is always there. The moment thinking subsides, you feel that stillness. It's another word you can use. I wrote a little book called Stillness Speaks. The first sentence in the book, if I remember correctly, is, you are never more essentially yourself than when you are still. You are still when the mind subsides, but awareness is not lost. In fact, awareness has grown. You are essentially not a person. You are the consciousness of the universe, disguised briefly as a person. But the consciousness of the universe wants to realize itself through you, or even an animal. You can look at an animal without always having to label it, and you just look or touch or listen. And it also is a manifestation of the one consciousness. But even the dog or the cat, they are still more deeply rooted in the beingness of themselves than humans. Humans have gone out a long way, lost themselves in mental abstractions, but it's all fine. It always was meant that way. But what's necessary now is the next step, the shift in consciousness. And it's a great opportunity now, especially if you want to first avoid further suffering for yourself and avoid contributing to the suffering of the world or humanity. Because there is, at the present time, an increasing craziness in the energy field. You can either become part of it and contribute to it, or you begin to dissolve it in yourself. So the key is become aware of yourself as a conscious presence. There's no doubt, even if your entire life is a dream, including this moment, there's no doubt that in order for the dream to happen, there needs to be a consciousness, the light of consciousness, in which the dream appears. And you are that. Whether you call it a dream or reality, it doesn't matter. You are the light of consciousness in which this appears. So everything can be doubted. You can doubt everything about yourself, except that you are conscious right now. You are the light of the world. And a person, by the way, you're also a person. But if you're a person that is rooted in the realization that you are the light of the world at all times, then you become, by the way, a much better person too. It's a side effect of awakening. You're no longer a totally crazy person. That's your task, especially now as the craziness is increasing. Your task is not to be part of the craziness. So the key is awareness, presence. And that is, be aware of yourself as a conscious presence. And then recognize that conscious presence in everywhere else, every other human, every life form. You can sense there too is the same conscious presence in a different, one could say different vibrational frequency. But you have to become still. Thinking needs to subside, if only for a moment. Observe the breath going into your body and coming out of your body. During that time, you're not thinking. You can use your breathing by being aware that you're breathing, and that becomes part of being aware that you're aware. I also recommend to feel your inner body, the energy that pervades your entire body, which is consciousness. And so you become aware of this inner energy field of aliveness. It pervades your hands, your arms, your legs, your feet, the entire body. The invisible presence that is the essence of who you are, it does not actually exist in this dimension. It exists in another dimension. You can then sense intuitively that this presence is not subject to decay or time or death. But when you only know yourself as a person, then you continuously have the fear of death. And ultimately, all fear comes down to the fear of death. If you want to lose the fear of death, know yourself as this invisible presence that actually doesn't even exist in this dimension. It's already in another dimension. And you realize, if you have to talk about it, but you don't have to say it, that ultimately there is no death. and to know that it's a direct knowing, that means all fear goes. Because if the fear of death goes, then ultimately, because that's the root of all fear, the ultimate loss. So meditation ultimately is, yes, it's very helpful. What we are talking about is the meditative state as your normal state of consciousness. So there's always a background of awareness in your life. And that means more and more present moment living. The present moment is actually usually not bad at all.